Hi, warmly welcome everyone in this video. Today we are going to talk about how we can reduce the stress as a teacher or as a parent. This video can happen in the context of the DigiMarket project. This is an Erasmus Plus project, and you can see two links here that can be useful, and you can learn more about the topics that I mentioned. Let me introduce myself. I'm Máté Farkas. I am the translator of this video, and this video originally made by Fülöp Hajnalka, who is a parent of 5 children, also a teacher, a digital anthropologist, and a profession of internet safetyness. She holds so many training courses, also for teachers, also for parents, and also for kids. The children whose are we going to talk about called screenagers as well. This word is mixed by screen and teenagers, and it comes from they grown up with screen. Also, one of their, we can say, parent is the screen. Maybe so many times younger. Ezt az elejét majd teljesen nézd át, és aztán vágj ebből egy értelmes mondatot. They called Generation Alpha as well. It means most of them are younger than Google because they are born after 2010. Dear watcher, dear listener, what do you think? Do you know any member of the screenagers who can't decide to live with this kind of situation when they have to grow up with the screen time, with the internet as well? It's so important to think about that who meets firstly with the internet. Like, for example, our generation meets with the internet at their adulthood, but not the alpha generation. To talk about that, how we can decrease the digital stress, firstly we have to talk about what is the digital stress. The digital stress is an inner frustration that we can feel when we are using digital gadgets or when we are in the digital space. The stress isn't a bad thing at all cases, because it can motivate us, it can inspire us as well. It comes from the evolutionary regulation. It helps us to stay alive. But of course, it can be harmful and bad in so many cases because it can frustrate us, it can make us deconcentrate, and it can take the focus from us, also the leading from us in our life and situations. Now we will focus on the bad part of it. Of course, because the good part of it just helps us, and as a teacher or a parent, we have to take the bad part out of the system. When we are talking about the digital stress, we are meaning when we are suppressed, frustrated, deconcentrated about the news that we are getting from the online space or from the social media as well. It can be harmful in so many ways. Firstly, of course, because we can be deconcentrated, frustrated, or depressed because of the situations like this, when we are feeling stressed, even, for example, about an email. But the other part, it can also be harmful for our normal relationships. We can just cut ourselves from the world, from our friends and family. Or we can even be less useful in our work or job. Also can concentrate less when we have this digital stress on our life. And it can be also harmful for our health, because when we are feeling this stress, we are getting more and more time in the online space, so we exercise less and move less, so it can be harmful for our body as well. Let's go through what kind of digital stress that we know. There is a good web page for it. It's called Information is Beautiful, and under that you can find a page that's called Intermental. It shows us what kind of social misbehavior do we have in the situations like this. Also the effects that it can comes. Also when we are just in a circle that we can't leave and we are just closed in our mind in a normal thinking circle. What happens that when we have too many information, we get too many information and we can't leap over it. What happened in us when we get a fake news and we believe in something that we have to realize later on that's totally fake. What happened when we have an endless feeling, especially in the social media, when we are just scrolling in the feed again and again and there is no over it. Let's see how can we successfully come out from it, because I don't want to give you any more stress because we are already in a digital space. The first and most important thing is to make borders for our social life in the online area, because in that way we can save ourselves from the overlessness. It's important also in the way of social life and also in the way of information income. You can also communicate to the world that in those times I'm not reachable, and in those times I am. We can also use it on our life, and of course we can also use it as a teacher or parent in the kids' life who we are responsible for. It's also important to find more and more and new ways that how can we be more conscious. When I'm talking, you can see this picture about this sheep graph, and you can think about what point you are right now in this sheep graph. Just come up this picture because it's also a way, gamification way, when we have to face with our feelings and emotions that I mentioned in the other video. Let's see where can be conscious. Firstly, and the most obvious part, is the phone. We can decide what kind of phone communication do we want to use. We can decide if, okay, I'm just using the phone for fixing a personal meeting, or we can talk in phone with someone, or we can chat with someone. We can send an email as well. Of course, all of these choices have a good and a bad part. We can also let some comment out the word, or we can even make some posts. It can be pictures or videos. We also have the right to set who can see these pictures, videos, or comments, and who's not. Next to the communication network and the things that we share, we can also decide what do we want to share, what kind of content do we want to share, what kind of emotion and feeling do we want to express to the world. If we want to be objective, why do we want to be objective? What kind of information do we want to share? Do we want the people to make their decisions easier? Do we want people to avoid something? Do we want people to connect with something or with someone? What's our goal with the online presence? What kind of data do we want to communicate? The main difference between the data and the knowledge or the information, it's basically the data is the smallest part of the information. From the data, everyone decide what kind of information do we want to build up. What kind of communication do we want to use? Of course, in the online area, it's a little bit different that we are meaning under the meta-communication word, because in the online area, the meta-communication can be how long is the video that we are sharing, when we are posting the video or the picture or the post or whatever, also the emojis. And what is the most important, that we can't no communicate. When we aren't sharing anything, it's also a communication network. It's a good example. For example, if you are a teacher and you aren't talking, you just stop talking, and everyone can do whatever they want, it's also and always a communication. The most important thing that we always have to face the effects that make the stress in ourselves, and because of this, we have to overthink our routine, because we are doing so many things because we have a routine for that. So our daily routine has to be so handled and knowledgeable. We have a routine for scrolling over our emails, to check our phone just to see a meme or something like that. We are taking part of from a meeting, also from routine. So the most important thing is to see this routine and check the points that we can change or we want to change. If we talk out loudly, then after that we can change from it, because the first step is to know the problem. A personal example, that usually on the meetings that I take part of, I usually do my bank transfers, and when I realized that, I just realized that I can't really focus on both of them. But it's just one example. And when I say it out loud for myself, I just faced this problem. So after I faced it, I can change it. Because when I'm doing it, I had a worse concentration. Also, I guilt. Or we can say I pretty like when the participant of my online course are focusing to me. So I do so many interactive part of my online conversation, and if they can't connect to it or they aren't participating in it in that way, then I have to change my interactive exercises. The easiest way to realize these are to slow down. It's always helpful and useful to slow down, because in that way we can just realize this point, we can think them over as well. Also, if we are slowing down, we can just concentrate on the thing that we are doing right now. In most of the cases, it's enough if we are telling it to ourselves. We don't have to involve anyone else. Let's name the feeling, find the best word for the feeling that we are feel at that point. There are so many lists about the feelings on the internet. It depends on your vocabulary. You can improve that at all the time, because if we know the name of something, we can rule it. For example, how do you feel yourself right now? Good, you have a good mood, you have a bad mood, you have a better word for it, you have a more exact word for it. Are you stressed? Are you opened? Are you happy? So you can see we can say so many words, and that's so important to find the best word and the most exact word for the feeling that you are having right now. But in so many cases, it can be useful if you have someone who you are sharing it with, because that person or people can be your support in the cases like this when you are feel lost or stressed. So it's work the same way as our relationships. For example, you have to talk out loudly in your relationships as well. How is your day going? How do you feel yourself? Are you happy right now? Can I help you somehow? You have to also ask it from yourself. And we have to be the support as well for the others, especially if they are kids. So we have to ask them, how do you feel yourself in this online situation? How does it touch you? How does that comment touch you? How does that post touch you? Because we can't be that clever, and we can't think ourselves that clever that we can know them or we can know the situation well without asking. And if we are doing this or asking these questions, the questions are already just decreasing the stress that the other partner is just thinking or feeling. There is a phrase from Confucius that says, "Tell me and I'm going to forget it, show me and I'm going to remember, and get me into it and I will understand." And the first step of getting, for example, the kids into something is to talk about it. And not just talk about it, but make a conversation. For example, a good question can be, how much time do you spend in front of your screen? And we can ask ourselves as well and get that information to the conversation. There are so many programs that counting this time. For example, how many time did you spend on Facebook or TikTok or whatever? At the task sheet that we will connect to this presentation, you can find these applications. These data, if you use them well, can tell us so many things about their online presence. Also can be a good question, not just how many time do you spend, but why on that site, why with that game, how do you use that game, how does it go in, are you stressed about it, or are you happy when you are playing, can you stop playing it, is it easy to stop, where do you use that platform, why do you use that platform, how many times do you use that platform, for example, only for 5 minutes but 20 times a day, or for half an hour but just once a day. Also a good question that how many screens do you have? Do you have a phone and a computer, or also for a tablet or a TV or whatever? There are so many ways how can we do a digital detox. It's important because in so many cases it's enough to just turn off ourselves in the way of online presence. For example, if we connect our online presence or our online detox to exercises. For example, when we are learning, we aren't touching our phone. Or when we are cooking, we aren't checking our email. Or when we are going to sleep, we let the phone at the other room. At the dinner, we aren't scrolling over our social media sites. Because as I mentioned, it's basically our online social presence is based on a routine. So if we decide to change our daily routine in that way, like for example, when we are having the dinner, we aren't scrolling over our Facebook page, and then in that case, our social presence can decrease. But it can be a physical place as well. For example, at the dinner table, we aren't using our gadgets. Or it can be, this place can be the bathroom or the bedroom, where we are just lose every gadget that we have. We can also connect it to the content. It depends on the age of the kid, the mindset of the person, the statue that we are in, that what kind of content do we use or do we not. And the other half, that we have to accept there are a thing that called digital joy. I mean, there are so many cases when you are just unstressed or happy on the online area, or even have a positive stress when you are creating something or meet someone new person in your life and make a relationship, a friendship with him. There is a thing that called fear of missing out, but we can change it to a thing that called joy of missing out. If we are decide to miss out from some happening or something, uh, in that case we can be happy because we decided it. Because in that cases we are find a good alternative thing that we can do instead of the thing that we can be feared to missing out. We can meet someone in person, or we can just talk someone else, or we can just rest, for example. And if we accept this, we realize the digital world is just one way to get joyness, and there are so many others, like taking a trip, making something by our own hands, take a nap, read a book, watching a movie. To reach this, it can be useful to make a digital house rule, like a contract that everyone can accept in our household or in the class where we are working. Usually, the first 6 years, in the first 6 years of the kids, it's said the kids can't acting anyhow else than we do. They imitate our things. They imitate the feelings that we do. In the second 6 years, we are just the managers, so we are allowing something or not allowing something, making the borders, let them use gadgets or not let them use, and we can talk over these rules again and again. But in this age, we are the parent or the teacher are still authoritaire. And in the last phrase, when somewhere, but of course it depends on the children. But in the last, between somewhere 14 and 21, we are just monitoring them. We have no right to tell them at the every days what to do, what not to do, what gadgets do you use, which one aren't allowed, what content do you see, what content aren't you. But in these cases, we still have to know which signs do we have to realize if he has some problem or she has some problem in the online area. For example, cyberbullying or the digital stress at overall, or maybe overusing, so some kind of addiction they have. It's called triple M model. When the first step we are the models, and in the second step we are the managers, and the last step we are just monitoring them. And some more solving tips for the digital stress. The first one that is so important to not to stress that you are stressing. You have to accept you are stressing. We have to accept it's a part of our life, and we also have to accept it's a totally new world. Like no one has the Saint Grail for the solution. Everyone is learning it right now. Everyone is trying to find their own way to solving the digital stress and all of the problems at the digital world. Especially for the adults, because the kids just growing up with this situation, but they aren't grown up yet. So they don't have the grown up mindset. So thank you so much for your attention. In the task sheet that are connected to this presentation, you can find more and more exact ways that how can you make the rules or how can you handle your own digital stress. Thank you for your attention again. I was Mati Farkas, and thanks the presentation for